Hi, everybody. This is Steve Maggi from SMA Law Firm. Welcome to Building the Bridge, our inaugural episode of highlighting success stories, American success stories. And we have with us the honor of being with Hitendra Patil, who's a multifaceted, multi-talented individual who's worked in the accounting services field globally for more than 20 years. He's also an author and an entrepreneur and has been in the most influential top 100 list in accounting in for the past 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you so much for being with us today, Tendra.
My pleasure, Steve. Thank you for having me, and thank you for that kind introduction.
So let's start from the beginning. We want to get an idea of who you are. Tell us a little bit about where you were born, where you grew up, what your childhood was like.
Yeah, I was born and brought up in Mumbai, the financial capital of India. That's where I did all my schooling, college, masters, and my first jobs were there right from the beginning. I was into uh, kind of accounting related field. We used to do investor accounting and then stock exchange related, shareholder accounting and things like that. So all through, I was in the financial services, technology driven businesses right from my first job. Childhood was pretty much protected. My parents took good care of us, provided practically every thing that we could have imagined in those days. A lot of guidance from mom, dad, both. I used to literally copy my dad. He would, get up early in the morning. He was in sales and in pharma industry, and he would get up early in the morning, watch in the mirror, and practice his sales pitch. And I was always concerned, what is he talking to? Who is he talking to? Who's behind the mirror? So, but that was it. I kind of picked up from him that you want to do well in life, you better practice your passion.
Something that I've seen a lot with my Indian clients over the years is the stress on education for those who have access to education in India is so important.
Yep, absolutely. Education, as they say, is a great leveler. It opens up your mind. It's not just what you learn in those books and all that. It essentially teaches your brain a method to figure out what's the truth, what's the reality, how different things shape up in different ways. The same thing can be told in five different ways and yet mean the same thing. All of that only education kind of teaches you that.
Right. And here's a question. Did you crunch numbers when you were a kid? Were you into math? A lot of people who go into the accounting field love numbers.
Honestly, Steve, math was not really my forte when I began, like in school and all that. But at the same time, I lived in a very friendly neighborhood, and in those days, people would recycle things and sell things, multiple things. And whenever there was a complexity, kind of, like they sold, let's say, seven different items, and they wanted to know, what exactly should be the total money, and they would call me, hey, come here, can you do this calculation quick? And I used to do those in my head. From that angle, math was in my blood, but as a subject, I did not like math for some reason.
So it came naturally to you, but then you had the influence of your father who was in sales, and so you saw how the numbers and the business go together, and maybe that's what inspired you a little bit to go down this unique path.
I personally think so. Sales is all about numbers, and there is nowhere to hide, as they say in sales. Your numbers are not there, you're not going to be successful in sales. So those numbers, yes. Entrepreneurship was like, okay, you got to go and convince somebody else to part with their money. So
Mhm.
they better believe that yes, there is something of benefit to them to give you that money. And my dad was. Morally very upright. He wouldn't do those, wishy-washy sales. He would not sell to people who would not want to buy or would not benefit from. Then all that he would say is, look, I'm going to give you information enough for you to decide whether this is going to benefit you or not. So from that angle, right in those childhood days, when it goes as a culture in your head, it kind of builds up your belief system and personality. And I'm very glad that it happened early in my life.
So when you first got into professional work, did you have an end goal in mind? Did you have a path? Because you've really, in my estimation, created your own unique path.
Yeah, it wasn't really clear to me when I started my career. I just jumped into whatever opportunity I got. But at the same time, I was always thinking, whatever I'm doing on my desk or as part of my work, I'm delivering that to somebody. Maybe it's within the company or to the customers. And what happens after that? What do they do with what I did? That was always my curious mind. So I would always think, okay, if I received this, what am I going to do with this information or work? And that is how I kind of tried to figure out the work has to be delivered to somebody to be able to use it, not just take information and keep it somewhere else. I think that built the foundation, and from there, that curiosity of what happens on the other end kind of kept growing and growing. And I think that is where all this influence and impact started coming in terms of, yeah, I got to do something that has to have a meaning. If I'm doing something is of no use to somebody else, what am I doing it for? So those kind of fundamentals were building up at that point in time, and I believe that is where I started, growing into a particular direction. That look, if I have to change something, or I have to impact something, or I have to influence something, that was not the thought really at that point in time that I'm going to influence somebody, but am I going to be useful to somebody else? So that is where it started, and slowly it started growing in that career path, and then slowly things started building up. I remember initial moments when I joined the Mumbai Stock Exchange for its depository company. In fact, when they started that company, I was the first employee. We didn't even have the company name, so I just took a blind risk, kind of. How do you join a company that doesn't have a name? So
Well,
yeah, but
have a
then
lot of
that,
faith, I guess. You have to have faith, right?
yeah, a lot of faith, or maybe just the risk was not there in my head at all. So I said, okay, this is something I can create from grounds up. And that's where I started writing those processes and things. Those were governed by the government. You got to get approval of your processes from the government. It was like a quasi government organization, not really government, but it's related to the stock market, and it is heavily regulated. So your processes have to be precise. You cannot have one sentence in your procedural document for following for others to follow, in terms of, okay, if it means two different things, then the process is not correct. So it was a precision engineering kind of a process that would undergo heavy scrutiny at the regulator level and then get passed. So that taught me communication in terms of how effective it should be. You cannot write essays there and let people figure out what does it mean. It has to be precision cut, as they say. But that also told me, if I have to convey something to somebody, to do certain things without having to call me or call my company or email us, the process has to be as crystal clear as possible. So that is where this communication and clarity of communication, those are the skills that I learned early in life.
How did that lay the foundation for this novel concept that you came up with, which is the sort of the fusion or the merging of the accountant and the entrepreneur, what you call the accountaneur?
Yeah. Actually, it goes back a little bit towards my early college days. My dad had a business, after working for long, long years in a job, he started his business. And initially the business did pretty well, and they started having usual, business challenges. And at that time, I just passed out of college and joined a company in a job, and I met some really good colleagues there, and I had one friend whose father was an accountant, a very experienced accountant. And I went for a dinner to this friend's place, and we started talking. And his father just asked, what does your father do and all that. And in that moment, I just expressed, he has a business and he's having a little bit of challenge right now. And I said, okay, can you bring me the financial statements next time you come and let me take a look at it? And I'm like, do you know what business he does? And he says, I don't need to know right now, but just bring the financial statement. So I actually got very curious. Why did he ask that? So let
Hmm.
me go and figure out. So next day I go with whatever old financial statements, and he kind of laid them down on a desk and looked at them, compared a few, like after 15, 20 minutes, he said, you know what, you guys have invested far too much in inventory and your sales are not keeping up to speed, so you're going to lock the inventory, and if you're in pharma business, it has an expiry date, is going to be trouble. So right now, don't get into inventory and manufacturing, just go and sell. Go and tell your dad. And like 15 minutes, he says, I go home and tell my dad that, look, this is a professional accountant, and he told me this, and the dad kind of nodded his, yeah, that's right, he's very, very right. And I'm like surprised, this accountant doesn't even know my dad, doesn't know his business, and how does he give in 15 minutes the kind of input that he gave? That's the time I recognized that accounting is not just about financial statements, balance sheets, and tax returns. It's about what those numbers tell you and how those numbers can really impact your business and your life. So that should be the focus of accountants. And then I said, okay, if I have to gain that knowledge of experienced accountant, why can't I look at technology and leverage that technology? And that's where all this started fitting in my head as pieces of puzzle. But those foundations were laid down long, long ago.
Amazing. So it took over a decade for this, all these thoughts and ideas and research and everything and experience that based on what you've seen in practice, also come together to actually be able to write this book, right?
That is correct. And then, by the time, I moved around in my career, I started actually working with the direct accounting profession, meaning professional accountants. So we did a lot of back office work for professional accounting firms, plenty of clients. And when I was talking to these accounting firm owners, I could kind of segregate them into two different categories, pretty distinct. Some who would, go by the letter of the law and follow in terms of compliance, deliver everything very precise, very accurate, versus somebody else who's looking for insights in those numbers and trying to help the businesses. So two distinct categories. And if I ask somebody, hey, CPA or Mr. Accounting firm owner, how do you introduce yourself? They say, hey, I'm John Smith, I am a CPA. Versus somebody saying, hey, I'm John, I'm an entrepreneur and my business is accounting. You see how it reflects.
Very different.
Very, very different. And it came naturally. And then I figured actually good, successful firms had those kinds of leaders who always thought like entrepreneurs first. Accounting is their business, but they are essentially business people. And that led me to believe that accountants have these powers of impacting lives very positively as long as they can unlock their own value. And I thought, I've connected the dots, let me tell those to the world. And that's how the book was born.
I love that idea that you mentioned of unlocking value. What came to mind for me is how accounting is thought of as in a two-dimensional way. You have the numbers and the balance sheets and all the numbers that you crunch, and you do your job and you crunch the numbers and you have a result. But a real entrepreneur in the accounting field will break those numbers down, analyze them, make it a three-dimensional analysis, really, right? And then that way they can unlock the value, minimize taxation perhaps, or maximize profit, or find ways to run the business more efficiently, right?
Absolutely. This is a fascinating field, Steve. I can talk on this for days. But let me give you a real crux of the story here. As an accountant, and you look at your client's business and you think to yourself, if this was my business, how would I relate the numbers that I'm seeing to what I did or what I did not? So what I'm trying to say here is, looking at the numbers as a professional accountant, if you can relate, these numbers came to being because of XYZ decisions that this client, the business owner, made or did not make. So not making a decision is also a decision. So let's say, going and adding 2 salespeople is a decision and you don't do it. And because of that, something did not happen. So you got to look at those numbers and relate and connect the dots, and then go back to the business owner and the client and say, look, to the best of my understanding of your industry, your business, I know you did these 3-4 decisions correctly, and that's why the numbers changed. But had you done XYZ, because others in your industry seem to be doing that, then you could have seen different numbers. So what the numbers are and what the numbers could have been. And that requires an understanding of the nature of business of your client. So that's why being an entrepreneur first and then an accountant helps.
And I guess if you're going to be helping other companies break down their numbers, you really need to have a business background, a business consulting type background as well. You can't just be a number crunching CPA.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is not a 10 pages balance sheet plus financial statement that you deliver and take your money as an accountant. That's not what your clients are paying for. Yeah, they might be saying, okay, I have compliance done, that I have everything ready for taxation. You mentioned taxation. There are accountants that I know who can literally do tax planning in advance and help you make really correct business decisions from that angle. And if the tax law allows, and mind you, it's a very complex tax law in United States. It's not easy for a standard business person to really understand. You require really professional expertise and the depth of understanding of those tax laws. But that's not from, okay, I'm going to help you pay not more than what you should be paying as taxes. Instead, if you're looking at, I'm going to help you make business decisions that will optimize your taxable money so that you can invest more in business and hence multiply your capital. Ultimately, what's happening is growth is the only way in which you can help the society in terms of creating jobs, in terms of making jobs more satisfactory, more rewarding.
So this book was incredibly successful. It became a bestseller. I know personally from having handled your cases that you got amazing reviews and letters and things published by behemoths in the industry recognizing the importance of your book. What then inspired you to write a second book? I have it here so everybody can see it.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about this book that you've written now. After that mammoth success, what inspired you to write a book? And you did it very quickly after the first one.
Yeah, so the second book was actually in the making for quite some time, maybe 3 years so far. And the manuscript was ready for like 1.5 years, and then COVID struck and kind of slowed down. But it also gave me an opportunity to, test some of my hypotheses and experiences that I shared in that book. But the point of that book, the second book, the Client Accounting Services, it has been a concept that has been growing in popularity in the accounting profession. In simple terms, it sounds very, very simple. As a professional accountant, you do the accounting for your clients. The whole industry in terms of technology that is provided to the accounting profession, most of the times the business owners are not told, like, here is a mini ERP kind of a software and you can do your own accounting, just plug the numbers in. That's not as simple as that. You don't leverage professional accountants' knowledge, you're going to be ultimately landing up in trouble, as your books will be in a mess, and hence tax becomes a question, IRS can go after you and all that stuff. But fear aside, you're not leveraging your own accounting data. So this particular aspect of how will or how should professional accountants offer full-scale accounting services to their clients and make it very optimized, very profitable, yet deliver a lot of insights to their clients. So I found a gap in the profession per se. Concept was there, but clarity was not there in terms of what exactly is client accounting services. And I wrote about that in 2018 December, and Accounting Today published that particular article, and that's the largest publication in the accounting profession. Even today, if you go to Google and search the terms client accounting services, that's the first #1 organic search result, even after 2.5 years. And in these 2.5 years, a ton of material has been written on client accounting services, bits and pieces, but nothing called a comprehensive client accounting services knowledge base. And I was collecting all of that. I was asking my customers, accountant friends, how are they doing marketing, for example? How are they bringing in new clients? What are the clients asking them? when do the clients leave them for not being happy. So I try to cover everything from every possible angle in terms of how a client accounting services practice can be made profitable for accounting firms. And just to give a quick perspective, Steve, uh, on an average, for what I've seen based on hard data, is if you earn X dollars from a non-CAS or client accounting services client, uh, from CAS client, you can easily make 3 to 4 times that X. It's that different, and you can imagine by automating certain processes, you're not multiplying your work effort or cost. So everything goes to your bottom line. Plus, because you're handling end-to-end work for your client, you are in far better situation to be able to advise very useful things to your clients.
I always had this curiosity about your books because, and your articles that you write that I've read a lot of. You give so much to this accounting and entrepreneurial communities. You give them so much insight and knowledge. What's the reward for you of sharing so much of these, so many of these insights and so much of this knowledge?
Yeah, they say, right, give it away for free. I don't know how much can you really give. At the same time, with all sorts of technology that we use now, even for medical terms, you would go to Google and search, what is this medicine for? And it's like, you become a doctor just Googling certain things. It doesn't happen like that, right? I can make people aware, I can make people understand certain concepts, but when it comes to implementing those things in your work, that's when the real risk reward ratio kind of comes into picture. That's when your decision making can become very, very difficult. There are 7 different ways to do certain things. And should you invest, let's say, in 7 different marketing methods, will there be returns? So you're talking of hard dollars now. And when that happens, you tend to not make those decisions so easily. You need guidance for that. Okay, so that makes me a hot commodity in the market in terms of, if you have the expertise, tell me. Yes, we know that, based on your articles and books, you know this concept in and out. But can you help me? In that case, I would kind of study whosoever's business they're coming to me with, typically accounting firms, and I'll take a look at them and say, okay, did you do this? Did you do X? Or what exactly is that you're trying to achieve? And things like that. And there are so many combinations of accounting firms in terms of their services, what they focus on, the niches and things like that. It's a complex world out there. The United States as a country is so much entrepreneurial. Right? There's so many different industries and business types, and within an industry there are so many niches. There's so many tax laws and other regulations that are applicable to those businesses, and it's a ocean of opportunities for accountants to really create good business, and that's where I can literally clear the fog for them.
Yeah, you actually led me right into my last 2 questions.
Mhm.
One of the things that you and I have in common, besides being immigrants, is that we are entrepreneurs and we also love working with other entrepreneurs. So,
Yes.
my question to you, I guess, 2 questions. One is, what are your plans? Because you are an entrepreneur, an entrepreneur is always looking for new horizons. What are your future plans? Do you have anything you can tell us about what you're thinking about doing next? And then the second question is, why the United States? You're such a talented person. Your concepts can apply globally. You chose the US, and luckily for me, that's what brought us together to the
Mhm.
point where you were so recognized in your field that we were able to get you an approved EB1 case, which is very difficult to do. Um, and you're an inspiration for a lot of people. So, what can you tell some of the viewers what your plans might be, and then why America?
Yeah, so in terms of my immediate future plans, one of the things I definitely have in mind is, again, the same thing, unlocking the value of whatever I know by converting things into some tangible products and processes. For example, I'm going to be converting certain things into assessments. There's a lot of insightful knowledge that goes into assessing a situation, but I know the patterns and I can literally turn them into a software driven assessment process that people can simply answer a few questions, for example, and come up with reasonably accurate conclusions that can help them make decisions faster. So that's something. It's called productizing the knowledge base, which is what I'm trying to do. And again, after you work for a long, long time in a given industry, you're kind of going through certain complex processes to identify those insights. But again, those are repeating processes. You can literally find a common ground across those complex things that go in your head. So as long as you can define them and convert into a product, you should be able to take that to a mass audience. And I can work maybe 24 hours a day. I'll be able to work maybe with 6 firms at a time, or maybe 20, 30 firms in a given month. But if I have to really give that impact to more firms, I got to productize the knowledge. So my path is clear in future. So that's one.
Follow your own advice when you set up your own venture. You can follow the advice that you give to others. It's great.
Oh yeah, I keep trying all the time, Steve. I cannot tell you enough how much experimentation I do on the side in terms of testing, trying, and all that stuff. I buy so many books that I cannot ever read. I buy so many subscriptions to technologies that sometimes I give up trying on certain things. But yes, I do all of that. So whenever that comes in, you will see a fantastic product, or products rather, I should say, uh, getting launched. US, I know you asked that question, why US and why not somewhere else? So even in India, when I was working with stock exchange related fields, there's a lot of these institutional investors from US that used to visit for due diligence purposes and all that stuff. Even though the subject matter was clear, why are they coming there? I was always fascinated in terms of how are they making those business decisions to invest millions and millions in some other country, and they don't even know the whole atmosphere of doing business in that country. They're taking that risk. So how do they do their due diligence? Why do they want to invest other than, of course, making money? But there has to be something else. So I was dealing with a lot of these non-Indian businesses at that point in time, and I could figure out certain patterns and trends in terms of thinking. And I said, look, these people come up with a very entrepreneurial mindset. At the same time, they're very majored in what they do. So you take risk, but you take calculated risk. That was the thing that was kind of all the time show, being experienced. And then I started working for a hedge fund back office administrator company, and they all had clients in the US, all into very heavy risk, high risk kind of environment. You had to process really, really quickly. A split second difference could make a huge difference. And then I started working with them, and that kind of exposed me to the US market far more closely. And then I recognized that, look, this is the land of opportunities for one simple reason: there's enough capital. And the second reason was people are actually entrepreneurial. They just want to multiply the wealth in a way that creates value for the entire society. It's not that somebody is buying land and selling at a higher price and you net the profit. Not like that. The capital was very effectively multiplied here in the US. So I identified that pretty much early in my career. I said, look, this is where the value to a value of your thoughts, your insights, your expertise can be really useful. And plus, people here assimilate the value very quickly. They say America has been a land of immigrants. It was built by immigrants, and I see why it is being said so, and for so many years and decades, that this land has attracted talent from all over the world, because you assimilate the talent irrespective of the origin. And they said, look, if I can bring measurable value to this market, I'm sure I will do well. And I was trying for some time, and fortunately, one of my friends here from the US actually referred your name, and that's how I connected with you. I'm so glad that I did. So you're the one who unlocked America for me, I must say that.
Well, it's an honor to have done that with you. And all the people that I've had the privilege of working with for the last 18 years, but you really are an inspiration, even to me as an entrepreneur and as a fellow immigrant. And so I'm really honored that we've had this chance to work together over the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm really happy that you were on with me today. Is there a last parting thought or anything you want to share with the audience, especially those people who are outside the US, who are thinking about potentially coming here and working and maybe setting up their own entrepreneurial ventures?
The same thing, Steve, that I tell business owners or tell the accountants, professional accountants, to tell their clients and prospects. There is professional knowledge that can multiply the positive impact on your life. Immigration, whatever you hear in the marketplace, in the news, in the media, and you go to, for example, USCIS site and you try to read, you Google, you try to self-serve, don't do that. Go and talk to a professional immigration attorney, because that's their specialist job. For even my case, when you actually figured out that I should be going in for an O1 because I fit in there very correctly. I did not know about O1 before that. All that I was thinking was maybe somebody sponsored me for an H1B, because
Right.
that's what gets talked about like a million times in every day in the media. So that's not what it is. There is so many different ways in which you can legally immigrate to US and bring your value and put it out there in the market. If you really bring your value and it has value, there is no way that you cannot succeed. So, go to a professional attorney, make sure that you are 100% compliant. The path is open as long as you follow a legal means, and that legal means one cannot identify by Googling. You've got to go to.
Well, not everyone that I work with has books published
Uh-huh.
and is in the top 100 influencers list in their profession. So thank you for making it easier for me over the years, and I'm thrilled that you will be part of this American society for the long term, Hitendra. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Steve. It was a pleasure, and thank you for having me here and letting me share some of my experiences, and especially the dreams that people have, but they don't act upon it. Try your best, approach your dream as if that's the only thing that you want to achieve, and it happens. I'm a living example of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.